The year was 1999. The debut of The Sopranos on HBO ushered in a more mature era of television programming, just as the debut of Family Guy on Fox sought to do the opposite. Slim Shady said his introductions to listeners everywhere with the track My Name Is, and Michael Jordan said his goodbyes to the NBA for the second time. And just in time for Oscar consideration, a film arrived in theaters that would get people talking about life, death, and what the hell its title had to do with anything. But Ryan never saw it. Until now. This is Movies I Missed, 1999, Episode 1, The Cider House Rules.
I'm Jesse Munoz.
And I'm Ryan Miller.
And this is Movies I Missed. We will be going over the year 1999. This is episode number 1. We'll be talking about the Cider House Rules. I do want to give a warning. We will be discussing all aspects of this movie, so be advised that includes spoilers. The Cider House Rules is a 1999 film directed by Lars Hellstrom, based on John Irving's novel. It follows the story of Homer Wells, who grows up in an orphanage in rural Maine under the care of Dr. Wilbur Larch. As Homer matures, he grapples with his identity and moral beliefs, especially regarding the orphanage's practice of performing illegal abortions. Eventually, Homer leaves the orphanage and experiences the world outside, where he falls in love with Candy Kendall while working in an apple orchard.
His name was Homer Wells. I named him after the Greek writer. You know Homer, of course. Of course, yes. And I made his name Wells because I could tell he was very deep. In truth, Nurse Angela named him. Her father drilled wells, and she once owned a cat named Homer.
Bye-bye, Homer.
All right, so this is our new podcast. You and I did the Sidetrack podcast for 14 years, Ryan.
That's right, we did.
You've moved on to do Triple Threat Theater, which is still going strong. Big fan of that show.
That's right, I have.
I did some stuff with Link to the Past, but we're back doing a new show. This is Movies I Missed, and we're starting with the year 1999. So this podcast is just going to be a review of movies that we've missed throughout the year that we've chosen. This season being the year 1999. So we each came up with a list of movies. And we're starting with Cider House Rules. This was your choice, Ryan.
Yeah, to be clear, we each chose movies that we hadn't personally seen before. So
yes,
over the course.
So there'll be some that I've seen and some that you've seen, but there's a couple here and there that we both haven't seen.
Like most of mine.
Right. Basically, your movies are the ones that nobody's seen between the two of us, and my movies are the ones that you've seen, but I haven't. But here we are with the Cider House Rules, which again was your choice. 1999 is an interesting year. It was, when we came up with this idea for the show, you can literally choose any year that we'd want to. But 99 is like this year that has like some really big movies. Like The Matrix is one of them. I know there's like a lot of movies that came out in 1999 that kind of like feels like it was the end of an era or even like the beginning of something else. I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you, as time has gone on and we're now just shy of a quarter century away from the 90s, I feel like in the 90s and in the decade following the 90s, there were obviously good movies that came out during the 90s, like, Terminator 2, Pulp Fiction, Jurassic Park. There's tons of them. Fight Club, Seven, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But outside of like the big stuff like that, I feel like I and probably a lot of other people were like, oh, the 90s aren't all that in a bag of chips, coming off of the 80s, which a lot of people our age look back on very fondly. And then as you get older and maybe more respectful and accepting of like the cinema of the 70s, the 90s always just felt like kind of, it's the dregs. But as time moves on, I feel like, especially in the cinematic landscape of today, the more I go back and watch movies from the 90s, either revisiting stuff that I already know that I like or catching up with other things through Triple Threat Theater, potentially this show, and or just like watching whatever I'm in the mood for in my movie room, I'm finding that the 90s surprised me a lot more than I ever would have expected.
I think what's interesting about the 90s, and specifically 1999, is we're right on the cusp of the DVD boom, right? Like, a lot of people's first DVDs, I feel like, was The Matrix.
Yeah, my first DVDs I got for Christmas in the year 2000 after I got my PS2, which was my first DVD player. And the two movies I got for Christmas were The Matrix and X-Men.
Yeah. And so there's like this, like, renting VHSs or purchasing VHSs, I don't know, didn't feel as feasible. Like, VHSs were kind of hit or miss as far as purchasing goes. I would rent a lot of VHSs. We would go to the Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, or the local shop and rent movies. But it wasn't until like DVDs kind of came out and became affordable, it felt like people would start building their collections. And so it feels like this is the start of a new thing that, would go on for the next 20 years. And 99 had some big movies. I mean, Star Wars Episode 1 came out that year, was the highest grossing movie of 99. The Sixth Sense was a big one. That was number 2 at the box office. Toy Story 2, the second Austin Powers, The Matrix, as I mentioned, The Mummy, The Blair Witch Project, which was like one of the most successful independent movies of all time. So 99 is a really, really interesting year. And as much good as there was, and we'll, we can mention some of those movies. Like I've mentioned the Matrix multiple times just because of how big it was for me. A lot of stuff I missed. So the question is going to be did we miss these movies? And the Cider House Rules is what we're going to start with. So what about the Cider House Rules do you think that you missed as you put it on the list?
I mean, as we kind of insinuated, just in general, I've seen more movies than you. And as, we were discussing potential movies to watch for the show, and the fact that I've already seen all the ones you picked, I've seen a lot more movies from this particular year. And so I was just like looking through a list on Wikipedia of like what movies came out to see what caught my eye. And the weird thing is there's nothing specific about the Cider House Rules that like I had always wanted to see it or something. I feel like it's, at least at the time, was like talked about a lot, but it's a movie that like in 1999, I probably would, if I'd seen a trailer for this, probably would have just like brushed it off and been like, oh, I'm not interested
right.
in that. I'm going to go watch, an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie for the 12th time. But I didn't even really know who all was in this movie. I think I knew Tobey Maguire, and maybe that's about it. But it's one of these things that the name of the movie has always just stuck out in my head because since I didn't know what the movie was, I had no clue what the fucking title meant. It's one of those titles where I'm like, okay, is it The Rules of the Cider House? Is it like The Cider House Rules, man? Like I never even knew, but it's just one of those names that's always stuck in my head, and I've always been curious about it. And when I saw like who all was in the movie, I was like, oh, that's probably worth seeing. I mean,
gosh, let's look at this cast. Okay, so the movie's directed by Lasse Hallström, who's also he did Chocolat, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, and then he did like a million ABBA music videos. If you look at his IMDb, it's like just all ABBA music videos. It was written by John Irving, who wrote this, The World According to Garp, Simon Birch, based on his own book. So he was the writer of the book and the writer of the screen of the movie, which is always interesting. You don't see that often. And then the other notable like person as part of the crew is Rachel Portman, who did the score, and she was actually the first female composer to win an Academy Award for Emma, and she did the score for this. But you look at the cast. I mean, you got Tobey Maguire, who would go on to be Spider-Man, and
yeah, apparently Sam Raimi saw him in this, and that's what made him decide on him for Spider-Man, or for Peter Parker at least.
Yeah, do you think he has a Peter Parker-esque quality to him in this movie? I know he does in Spider-Man movies, but is it hard to look back on it and say like, oh yeah, I could see?
I mean, based on the way that Sam Raimi portrayed Peter Parker as just like a very kind of innocent, kind-hearted, like, aw shucks.
Meek.
Yeah, I mean, definitely while watching this movie, I mean, story elements and stuff notwithstanding, I could definitely see how he saw this and was like, that's my Peter Parker.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like when you watch this movie, it's almost like an insight to like, oh, I see now how he got cast as Peter Parker. This was one of his first big movies as far as leading roles. I think he had Pleasantville was the one he did right before that.
It's just interesting when you read about any of the movies that have like these young guys from the time period. It's always like, oh, well, Leonardo DiCaprio was our first choice, but we couldn't get him or he backed out. And so we ended up with, you know, Tobey Maguire or whatever other young actor at the time, because I'm pretty sure I did see that Leonardo DiCaprio passed on this movie, and that's why they then went with Tobey Maguire.
I'm sure Leo could have been fine, but I think Tobey was the right choice, and we'll get to that as we talk about the movie. Michael Caine as the doctor, Dr. Wilbur Larch. Big Michael Caine fan. I have lots of thoughts on him in this movie.
Is it just
specifically?
Me, or this was, as far as I can tell, or as far as I can recall, the first and only instance I can think of him putting on a American accent, like trying not to sound British.
Let's just talk about that. What is that? What he was doing? Because it was awful.
Yeah, he was trying to do a New England accent, I think.
So the movie opens with him narrating the story,
and I wasn't sure it was him when you weren't.
I know,
when you weren't
because
looking
it goes
at him.
in and out, right? Like his accent is not a good American or even New England accent. It just sounds like Michael Caine trying to not sound like Michael Caine.
I mean,
and it's so off to me.
The funny thing is, you know, these days especially, there's so many times when like I see an actor in a movie and I'm like, oh, they're great. And then I see an interview and I'm like, they were British? Because it feels like half of Hollywood is British people doing like flawless American accents. But Michael Caine, A, he's got such a distinct, unique voice. B, he's been in 1,000 things. Like, it was weird. Like, for a little while as I'm watching the movie, I couldn't tell if he was trying not to sound British or not, because his voice, his like way of speaking, I'm so used to it being British that it did sound weird. And I'm not sure if he was doing a bad job or if it's just impossible to mask that fucking voice that everyone's so used to hearing.
I mean, everyone else must have enjoyed it because he won a friggin' Oscar for this movie.
Yeah.
Like, I was blown away. I feel like it's hard for me to get past that voice. Like, even if the performance is good, the voice just feels so off. And I don't know if that's, again, we're 20 years plus from when this came out, if I've just seen too much of older Michael Caine where his accent is just so thick. And
I mean, again, my question stands. Can you think of another movie where he tries to alter his voice, where he doesn't just speak like normal Michael Caine?
It's always been the same.
Yeah, that's my thing. It's just like, I think it's just we've never heard him do it before, or maybe since. I mean, I haven't seen nearly every Michael Caine movie, but I've seen a lot of them, like stuff when he was younger, like The Italian Job I watched not terribly long ago, or The Black Windmill, and then up through like, you know, fucking Mr. Wayne, you know, all of his Batman movies and stuff. Like, this is the only time, not even in an interview doing an impersonation of someone, have I ever heard him not sound British.
Right. And I think what threw me off is, and I think this is valid, is it's not just the performance, because we don't see him in the first like few minutes of the movie, or the first, you know, like as he's going through the narration of what's kind of setting up Homer's story. You don't see him, so you're kind of confused. Like, is that Michael? Is that Michael Caine?
And then the first couple scenes,
in a good way. It wasn't like, a good way.
It's like your mind is telling you that what your eyes are seeing isn't correct. It's like, it just, something feels wrong. But it, you know, like, think about somebody else with a really unique voice and way of speaking, like Christopher Walken. I don't think I've ever seen a movie where Christopher Walken doesn't talk like Christopher Walken. Like, that's part of the thing you hire him for. But like, I've never seen a movie where Christopher Walken tries to do like a Russian accent or something. Like, if you did, it would probably sound crazy, because he's so, you know, his voice is so Christopher Walken. And I think it's the same kind of thing here. I think Michael Caine has that distinct, unique voice. He's been parodied and mimicked so many times. And yeah, it was weird. I mean, I don't know if got used to it is the right way of putting it. I accepted it after a while.
I think it's bad direction, because I feel like you could just take Dr. Wilbur and make him British.
He could have just been British.
Yeah, just make him British. I feel like you're worsening one of the better aspects of the movie. Does it take away from the entire movie? No. It was just really off-putting.
I mean, it's weird because like his performance I still think is perfectly fine. It's just he sounds a little funny, but it's the kind of thing where like if I'd never seen a Michael Caine in a movie before, would it have sounded funny? I don't know. I mean, I'm not incredible at spotting or recognizing dialects or like accents and things. So whether or not he was doing even close to a passably good accent from that region, I have no idea. But I just know that as Michael Caine, he sounded funny.
Yeah. So let's go into more of the cast, because I find some of these names that popped up in the early credits kind of interesting. Like Charlize Theron, again, pretty early in her career. I'm just a big fan of her in general, so was glad to see her in this.
And the thing about Charlize Theron, and like, you know, I've seen a couple other things early in her career like this, but I'm more used to seeing her, you know, the past like 10, 15 years. But man, there must be like a coin flip at some point where it's like she went from babyface Charlize Theron to like modern Furiosa Charlize Theron, because I'm so used to, again, seeing her the way she is now, that seeing her this long ago, she just has this like round, cute face with like cheeks you want to pinch.
Yeah, she really does.
It's so funny. Now I picture her as more of like a slim, sleek badass.
Chiseled. Yeah. A little bit more. I mean, she's like a Greek goddess, no matter which way you perceive her, either as the babyface Greek goddess or as like this like warrior Greek goddess, but she's amazing. Paul Rudd, didn't know he was in this movie.
Yeah, he's not in it a ton, but
yeah, he's got a pretty significant part as far as like moving the story forward. Delroy Lindo as Arthur Rhodes. How familiar are you with Delroy? I feel like you probably were a little bit more familiar with him than I was.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a that guy actor for me. Yep. I rewatched the movie Congo that he's got a smallish part in a billion times when I was younger. And he pops up in other things that I am a fan of, like Get Shorty, or he was in The Five Bloods not super long ago, and I think that was a Netflix movie. But yeah, I like when he pops up, he's another guy like Keith David for me, where he's just like a really good character actor I like to see in stuff.
A lot of times I would know who he is but not know his name, right? Like he's just kind of that guy, and he's always really good in what he brings. Erykah Badu was in this, which was, I'm like, there's sort of a run of black actor names, and I'm like, and not just like actors but rappers and stuff. Heavy D as Peaches was in this, and I'm like, wait a second, what is this movie? Like, I have no idea we're going this way, and they don't show up for almost half the movie. So I was really curious. Kieran Culkin early on, post Home Alone, pre some of his other bigger movies. I think you guys covered one of his movies recently on Triple Threat. Well, I say recently, it's probably months ago now for you.
I mean, it's hard to keep that shit straight because we bank episodes on that show, so sometimes it's been months between when we record one and when it comes out. Time is just a vague concept to me anymore these days since COVID, I think. But yeah, Igby Goes Down is a movie that we reviewed with him, which is probably what you're thinking of.
Yeah. And then J.K. Simmons in a
Blink and you'll miss him.
I think he had no lines. Did he say anything in the movie?
I think he says something the first time you see him, which is only like the first of 2 times you ever see him, maybe. But I think the scene is like Charlize Theron, because he plays her father, introducing Tobey Maguire to him. I think J. Jonah Jameson and Peter Parker say at least one thing to one another in that scene.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think, because you think of J.K. Simmons, and that's obviously a bigger name now. You wouldn't just put him in a role with no lines. But in 1999, I'm just trying to think about like what was J.K. Simmons doing, and is this a little bit more common?
I mean, it's probably. I mean,
of his stature,
it might be a case like. What's the actor's name who plays Mike Ehrmantraut in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul? We're like, as far as I knew, I had never seen that guy before. And then you go back and you rewatch stuff from like 20, 30 years earlier, and it's like, holy shit, he's a cop in Gremlins from like 1984 or whatever. Like J.K. Simmons, for all I know, is one of those. But I mean, the first time I ever became aware of him was J. Jonah Jameson in 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, if you look at his filmography, especially movies, he wasn't in a lot. He's been working since it looks like 1986 and some TV stuff. Maybe he's done some theater stuff. But like in 97, he did Law and Order. Oh, and Oz. I think Oz was probably his big one.
Yeah, I've never seen Oz, but I have been told he's in that.
Yeah, and also 97. So it feels like this is like the cusp of like him about to break out.
Mm-hmm.
But
don't forget, I never watched the show, but I think it's the youngest brother from Malcolm in the Middle is in this.
That's right. Yeah, I forget what his name was in the show, but
in the movie, his name was Fuzzy.
Eric Persullivan, it looks like his name is. Yeah, forgot about him.
And one other recognizable face for me that I was sitting there for like half the movie, like, who the fuck is this person? Then it finally occurred to me that the younger of the two nurses, or at least the nurse that Michael Caine is kind of having a relationship with, the actress's name is Kathy Baker, and I don't know if I've ever seen her in anything else except for Beetlejuice, but she plays like the kind of the queen of the neighborhood ladies who like tries to seduce, or not Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, who tries to seduce Edward in Edward Scissorhands.
I remember.
Yeah.
I think she was in some other stuff.
I'm sure she is, but just like, that's the thing that I finally clued into like halfway through the movie, like, oh, it's her.
Yeah, that's right. Joyce from Edward Scissorhands. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into, I guess, the plot or what you thought about the movie. You know, it opens up with this orphanage, and I thought the movie was going to be like the rules of the orphanage. I thought the Cider House Rules were like the Cider House was going to be like the nickname for this orphanage. Because you spend a decent amount of time in the orphanage before like the story really kicks off.
Yeah. I mean, the movie has this kind of, I don't know, this quote unquote epic feel to it where it's like you're, you know, seeing this person's entire life, because you see Homer Wells is the main character played by Tobey Maguire. You know, you start off in an orphanage and you see him as like a little child, and there's the narration, and he gets adopted, but then the people who adopt him bring him back because he never like cries and never makes any noise, and they think it's weird. And then somebody else adopts him later, and they bring him, or he ends up being brought back because they find out that he's being beaten by these other people. And then he just grows up in the orphanage, and the doctor who like helps deliver the unwanted children from the women who come, and as we find out, also does like the abortions for the women who want to terminate. He like raises Homer basically as his own son, and is essentially teaching him, without ever going to medical school, teaching him how to do, you know, abortions and deliver babies and things like that and take care of the kids, so that he can, presumably, he's hoping he will take over the business at some point. And then, you know, Homer, how old is he supposed to be when he's Tobey Maguire in the movie? Do they ever say, like...
I don't. He's got to be over 18 though, right?
He's got to be in that like late teens to early 20s. I would guess around 20. Yeah. Maybe, but he's lived the sheltered life. He's never been outside of the orphanage,
or
that's
even where he's, all of Maine. Like he's never really explored. He's just grown up in this orphanage.
He's never seen the ocean, he says. And so he's reaching that age where, like he disagrees with, so I guess, abortions are illegal, but Michael Caine's character, Dr. Larch, feels sympathy for the women who don't want to have this child and bring another like orphan into the world. So he is willing to do these illegal abortions, and Homer has a problem with that. So like that's like part of the business he doesn't want to take on, and he's kind of turned off by that. And he's getting to the age where he's like becoming more argumentative with Larch, and he obviously just has this like yearning to like go out and experience something. Even he couldn't even join the military during World War II because he, as far as he knows, has like a heart condition that meant that he couldn't, like that would have been a way, as unfortunate as it would have been, for him to go out into the world and see it a little bit. But even that he dodged.
But he's like craving something more. And it's just weird watching him being pushed into becoming a doctor, even though he's not actually becoming a doctor. You know what I mean? Like they're skirting the rules. It's this weird, like, you're my son in a way, and I'm training you, but this is not good for Homer at all. Like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this weird dichotomy. And the doctor's all over the place because he's like addicted to ether. He's like constantly, like right away we see him like drugging it up. I'm like, oh, who is this guy? Like I was so confused by what was going on as far as with Dr. Larch and what his intentions were. And it was just kind of all over the place.
Homer, if you expect people to be responsible for their children, you have to give them the right to decide whether or not to have children. Wouldn't you agree?
How about expecting people to be responsible enough to control themselves to begin with?
How about this child? You expect her to be responsible?
I'm not talking about her. I'm talking about adults. You know who I mean.
But like I was saying, the movie has this sort of epic feel because it feels like it's spanning some amount of time and you're seeing like people grow and change. But for the most part, the movie is basically two locations. Mm-hmm. We get through the whole Homer growing up thing and getting to the point where he finally leaves pretty quickly. And then jump to the end. He does end up moving back to the orphanage and taking over like Larch always wanted him to. But you would almost expect a movie like this, he goes away and he bounces around and he sees different parts of the world and learns all these lessons or something. That's kind of what you'd typically expect to see. But he goes to one other place. He stays there for less than 2 years. He's there for like two seasons. Yeah. And then he comes home. Well, comes back to the orphanage.
Which is his home.
That's it.
His home.
Yeah. I mean, it's like if he lived to be Dr. Larch's age, 1.5% of his life would have been spent somewhere else. Like,
right. Yeah. It does feel like it's supposed to be a little bit more epic. It almost feels like it's supposed to be like a little bit more like Forrest Gump in a way, but doesn't do as much. And maybe the book delves into things a bit more. And from what I was reading on Wikipedia, the book is a little bit longer. Like, I feel like, I read that him and Candy have a child and things like that.
What?
So it feels like, So it feels like there's a lot of other stuff that just gets cut out. Mm-hmm. And so it loses its epicness, even though the movie's tone is still trying to make you feel like this is a lifelong journey that we're kind of going on.
Yeah.
With Homer, like it's more than just a coming of age, because like with Forrest Gump, we see lots of, he goes from kid all the way to, I don't know how, like 20 years at least in that movie. This is, like you said, less than 2 years that we really see.
In Forrest Gump, he's in the military, he's overseas, he fights, and then he has like a career playing ping pong, and he's got the period of his life where he works on a shrimp boat, and he has the period of his life where he just runs forever. And it's like, this movie is like Forrest Gump if we only covered one of those. And that one thing he did was just like work on an apple orchard for two years.
Right.
But
he gets laid, works on the apple orchard.
Part of the reason I think I had this epic feel, and I'm only probably comparing it because sort of the subject matter and Tobey Maguire. Did you ever see there was like a television miniseries for, I want to say it was like IFC or something, maybe within the last decade, like maybe about 10 years ago, called The Spoils of Babylon?
Heard of it, haven't seen it.
Do you know what it is?
Mm-mm.
It was intended to be like a parody of back in like, I guess the 80s, 90s. They would have these like television miniseries events on primetime TV that would be like retelling these epic stories, and they'd be like 6 hours long over the course of 3 nights, and they'd be these more epic stories. And The Spoils of Babylon is like a parody of those. It's like a 6 or 7 part series. And it's got a bunch of people, like Kristen Wiig is in it, and Haley Joel Osment. The main character is Tobey Maguire, but it's like a complete farce. So the idea is they have Will Ferrell playing a Orson Welles kind of character who he's like, he's wearing this big fat suit, and I think he has a beard, and he's like acting all belligerent and drunk. And they have these parts at the beginning of it and end of every episode where he's supposed to be the guy who like directed The Spoils of Babylon, which we're now showing on TV. And it's like this incredible, like, thing that I've made that you're now all going to see. But he's like getting more and more drunk on wine as the show goes on. And it tells the story of like a guy who grew up in this like simple place, and he goes out and he joins the war, but it's like all very, very farcical. Like there's a character that is played by a mannequin. It's just like an unmoving mannequin, but they give it a voice, and all the characters in the thing act like it's a real person. And it's also just supposed to be like the crazy ravings of Will Ferrell's character. But because it's that kind of story, and it's Tobey Maguire as the main character in it, that is like what I was thinking of this whole movie, like that sense of like an epic story, even though this one really is not at all.
It's not. It is more of a coming of age story of a man or a boy becoming a man, but it feels almost incomplete. So he then meets Paul Rudd and Charlize Theron as they come to the orphanage to get an illegal abortion. Paul Rudd is a lieutenant or something in the army, and this is around World War II. And just randomly, Homer's like, I got to get out of here. Well, you guys?
He basically, it's love at first sight. He falls in love with Charlize Theron, even though she's dating and aborting the child of Paul Rudd, who's also just like a really nice guy and is willing to take him with him.
I thought we were going to get like the jerky Paul Rudd, but no, it's just classic good guy Paul Rudd. Like he brings on Homer, he gets him a place to stay and a job at his orchard and all these things. And what does Homer end up doing? Like macking on his girl. But there's a couple things that happen that are predictable, like him falling in love with Charlize Theron, because like how could you not?
Yeah, well, within like weeks or days of so basically Homer is like, hey, can I get a ride with you guys? And Paul Rudd's like, sure, where are you going? And he's like, where are you going? And he's like, back to my apple orchard. And Homer's like, yeah, I'll go there, sure. Like he just wants to get away. So Paul Rudd, nice dude, offers to get him a job working at picking apples if that's all he wants to do. And that's good enough for Homer because he just wants any excuse to leave. And then like within days of setting Homer up at the apple orchard, Paul Rudd's character has to get shipped off again, and he's like a pilot. And then while he's gone, Charlize Theron's character says numerous times, like, I'm not good at being alone. So, Homer's this impressionable guy who's not very worldly and has this puppy love thing for her. So he basically takes Paul Rudd's place in bed, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
While he's gone.
And we get introduced to a whole new cast of characters. And these are people that come up from, I think they said Florida or something, that come up to
I think they orchards. Like pick, was it bananas or something during part of the year? And then they come up here for like the apple season to pick apples.
And that's when you get introduced to Delroy Lindo's character. He kind of leads the group of apple pickers, and they kind of live in this house.
Well, they live in the cider house. Basically
the Cider House Rules. Yeah. And they pick the apples.
They pick the apples, they turn it into cider, they pack them and ship them out to places. And they're there for presumably a couple months out of the year. And, they seem to think it's kind of weird that there's this white guy because they're all black workers. Right.
But he just loves it. He's this is, again, kind of reminds me of the Forrest Gump, not because he has any, I don't think he has any mental issues, but he just hasn't experienced anything. So he's just like,
he's very childlike and impressionable.
Yeah. He's like, great. Let's go pick apples. Or you want me to do this? Okay. I'll do this. And just is like, wants to live life. Right. And so there's a little bit of humor that comes along with that. And then in the second season of them picking apples,
talk about a fucking plot twist. I mean, the movie has really some dark stuff with the like abortions and like the kids, being sad that they never get adopted, and the
one dies.
The Malcolm in the Middle kid, he's got like some kind of lung issue and he ends up dying, and they bury him, but they're like, let's not tell the other kids. Let's just tell him he was adopted. And
right.
Like there's some darker stuff, and
the sadness of them even getting picked to be adopted, it almost feels like cruel the way that like the parents come out and I was like, like I'll take this one. You know what I mean?
That
like,
scene where like all the kids are eating like their lunch or whatever, and they're introducing them to the children one by one, and they get to just like the sweetest, cutest looking little girl, and they stop, and all the other kids are like, "Well, that's it for us."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's got to be a way you choose it, but it just feels there's a cruelty to almost the way that they portrayed it.
Yeah.
So we meet these cast of characters that are the apple pickers, and they're all good people, including Delroy Lindo, who's, he's stands up to like one of the other guys.
You could have offered me my own Hawaiian island, and I never would have been able to guess what the fuck was going to happen in this movie based on everything we'd seen up until now.
So they come back, and Erykah Badu is troubled, right? And she's Delroy Lindo's daughter. Rose is her name. And I feel like you immediately know like her dad's beat her or something like that. Not only is that the answer, but he has molested her.
I didn't think that he beat her. My assumption, because she was sick, she was like vomiting and like not hanging around everybody else. I was like, okay, she's pregnant and she's hiding it from her dad. That's what I thought was going on.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Is it true?
What's that?
Are you sleeping with your own daughter?
I think you've been staying up too late at night, Homer.
You're having sex with your own daughter.
Ain't nobody having sex with my daughter. Let me just tell you that.
You're lying. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? What do you care who hears? I mean, come on, they know already, don't they? They know, Mr. Rose.
And do you know what your business is, boy? I know you don't want to be in no kind of business with me. That's what I know.
Yeah? Well, go on, cut my clothes. I've got other clothes.
You're gonna come here talking to me about lies and shame. When those people took you in, and that boy Wally is away at war.
Yeah, well, she's your daughter.
And I love her.
It turns out, no, she's been impregnated by her father. And what's weird about it, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that no one really, like, they say that it's wrong, but by the end, when he's like dying and stuff, like when she kills him, it just kind of feels like he never really learned that it was wrong. You know what I mean? He just kind of goes out like, don't tell anyone that she killed me. I'll say I did it. And I just loved her so much. I don't know. There was just this weirdness to all of it. Maybe it was just
tell me a way that they could have tackled that subject matter and it not been weird, but
yeah, that's true. I
mean, I'm having trouble even remembering now, like Homer reveals to Arthur, Delroy's character, that she's pregnant, right? Like when he's up in the tree, because he confronts him and he's like, are you sleeping with your daughter? And Delroy Lindo's like, that's none of your business or whatever. And then he says that she's pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess he didn't know, but it's like he wasn't ashamed of screwing his daughter. He was then ashamed that she was pregnant, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the 1940s. These are like, for lack of a better term, they're basically almost migrant workers. Like they just, they have no home. They roam around. Like all they really have is one another, this like small group of people who work together. He's the boss. And I mean, those other guys, they risk losing their jobs, I guess. And so obviously they're not cool with it, but they...
Right. Nobody's cool with it. But the way it ends, maybe because she ends up killing him and running away. I don't know. There was just this uneasiness that never left me with the story.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, I don't think it ever really got through his head. And I don't think, if he hadn't been stabbed, I don't necessarily think that he would have changed, which is maybe why his character had to die. But then, in his final moments, he doesn't get redemption, but it's kind of like everybody just agrees to be like, well, we did the abortion, so there is no kid. She ran away. Whether you die or not, you're never going to see her again. Like in these final moments, let's just, let the guy go in peace and pretend that everything's okay.
Right. Maybe that's what it was. It was that idea of like pretending everything is okay.
Yeah, because he's dying.
I don't know what the solution is.
He's gut wounded. And he said that he even like dug around in the wound himself to try and make it look like self-inflicted, because that was his thing. Like, yeah, tell everybody that I killed myself because my daughter ran away and I love her so much.
Right. And that's what it is. It's this like weird resolution that doesn't feel like a resolution. And that's life. I get it. But in the story, I just never, so uneasy. It was just so uneasy and so out of left field. Like, I didn't know that this was going to be what the movie was.
Yeah.
And then the whole Cider House Rules thing is just thrown in there. Like, the rules didn't even really tell me. How did they apply to the story? Is it because there's rules and they don't even read them, or the rules don't apply to them?
Okay, so I don't know if this is the reason. This is me kind of reading into it, I guess. But at the end of the day, when you consider Homer wasn't cool with the illegal abortions. He learned how to do it. He's witnessed it. He could do it literally, physically, but wasn't down with it. And that's not the reason he left the orphanage, but it's it's one of the factors.
Mm-hmm.
So like, that's not the life that he necessarily wanted for himself. So he goes away to live his life. And in all things considered, like taking a life into account, in no time flat, he is confronted with a situation where he has the skills and ability and know-how to ease someone's pain and take care of this problem, which is this child that nobody wants. And, for some reasons, people could argue shouldn't be born into that situation. So he's able to use the skill that he never wanted to learn for what could be conceived, as long as you're not like super far right, as for a good purpose. And so it's like he came to terms with the fact that, the things that Dr. Larch is doing are illegal and I may not agree with them morally, but now I can understand, why we break the rules. And then I guess the whole thing with the Cider House Rules is similarly, there's these rules hanging there, and, a list of rules seems like something that should be important and paid attention to. And then when they reveal the rules at the end, they're fucking stupid and there's no reason to follow them in the first place. And I guess I saw on Wikipedia or like IMDb or something that I guess this movie at the time sparked conversation about abortion. Because the movie definitely is pro-abortion. That seems to be half of the message. Like half the movie is just like, we're going to tell a fun-loving story, and half of the movie is, ooh, this is fucked up, but abortion can seemingly make it better. And that's kind of what I read into the rules. It's like you either call the movie like Abortion for Good, or you call it the Cider House Rules, and it's like a metaphor.
Right. Okay.
That's the way I read it.
Yeah, I think that's a good interpretation of the title.
You reading the rules, huh?
Mm-hmm.
What are they?
Please don't smoke in bed.
We already heard them in Homer.
2, please don't operate the grinder or press if you've been drinking. 3, please don't go up to the roof to eat your lunch.
Oh, now that's the best place to eat lunch.
4, please, even if you are very hot, do not go up to the roof to sleep.
What do they think? Go up to the roof to sleep. They must think we're crazy.
They think we dumb niggas, so we need some dumb rules, is what they think.
This is the last one. There should be no going up on the roof at night.
Now, why don't they just say, don't go up on the roof?
That's it.
That's it.
That don't mean nothing at all. And all this time I've been wondering about them.
They're outrageous, them rules.
Who live in this side of the house? Who grinding up those apples? Person that side of cleaning up all this mess? Who just plain live here just breathing in that vinegar was someone who don't live here made those rules. These rules ain't for us. We the ones supposed to make our own rules. And we do. Every single day.
Well, there's 3 different rules on that list. It's like 5 things, and 3 of them are basically stay off the roof of the cider house.
Right, yeah.
And it's like, you know, yeah, any person in their right mind wouldn't go up on the roof because you could fall and hurt yourself. And it's like, another rule is, you know, don't perform abortions, but, you know, rules are meant to be broken, I guess.
What's strange about the whole abortion debate, and I think that when we get to some of the reviews of the movie from critics, is that it does kind of have this pro-abortion view, but with a character that isn't really pro-abortion, right? Like,
well, I think that's how the movie keeps from it's you know, the character comes to terms with it, but he is in his heart of hearts against abortion.
Right.
But it's like they find one of the easiest examples of how an abortion could be a good thing or could be acceptable, let's say. Like it's you know, it's low hanging fruit in the abortion debate, you know, basically. Right. So it's like, it's the easiest way to tackle that subject matter without just coming right out and like pounding your chest and being like, abortion's for all, you know? Right. So like has a message, but it's like the opposite viewpoint on it is like so gross to be like, no, she should still have that baby because even though it's her dad's baby, it's still a baby. Like it's tough to take that stance.
What's weird though is the pro-abortion character, Dr. Lurch or whatever, is so outside the rules, right? Like he's constantly lying to like the board that wants to bring people in, or you know that pays for the hospital, pays for him, or pays for the orphanage. And I mean, he's like this drug addict, and he's, you know what I mean? Like the way he treats the children is not great. Like I wouldn't say he's a good leader for the orphanage, just in general. The way he's pretty abusive in the way he treats like Kieran Culkin and Tobey Maguire.
It's just a marvel to me that you still have such high expectations of people.
Well, I'm happy I amuse you.
Look at it this way. What choice does Buster have? What are his options? Nobody will ever adopt him.
Look at it this way. Buster and I are sitting here right beside you. We could have ended up in the incinerator.
Happy to be alive under any circumstances. Is that your point?
Happy to be alive? Yeah, I guess so.
I don't know if I'd say that. I mean, you know, he's got all of these kids that he's kind of in charge of, and that's what the nurses, I think, are there for, is more like the day-to-day taking care of the kids. But he's just like he's the de facto father figure because he's the guy there.
It's the guilt trips and the lies and making them do things that they shouldn't be doing.
I think it's the contrast of the two sides. Again, like, okay, so Tobey Maguire, his character, morally against abortions, but is able to turn the corner for, you know, depending on how you look at it, the sake of good. But then if you had the doctor character who's doing the abortions being like the best, most perfect guy, and he does abortions, that must mean it's the right thing. But making him kind of shitty and a drug addict, it's like, again, the writer not taking one side so harshly. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's not like being preachy. It's, again, you could consider it low-hanging fruit, or you could just consider it playing safe.
Yeah, it does feel preachy, though. Like, in this weird way, like, it does feel like...
Well, anytime your entire movie is about the topic of abortion, I mean, it's going to feel preachy. But I think that he's doing his best to like, get his point across, but still kind of stay in the middle. That's how it reads to me.
Yeah, maybe that's the weak part of it, is like, staying in the middle feels... I don't know.
I mean, if he hadn't, it wouldn't have been nearly as successful as it was.
That's true. So, performance-wise, what did you feel about some of the performances in the movie? Do you feel like Michael Caine deserved an Oscar when you watched this movie?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't think he was bad. Again, like, take away the potentially troubling accent. Mm-hmm. And I thought there was nothing wrong with his performance. Was it like better than any other supporting performance the year that this movie came out? I kind of doubt it, because like you said, there's some great movies that came out in 99.
Yeah.
But I mean, I thought he was good. I thought pretty much everybody was good.
I thought Tobey was really good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. Like, I think he does a good job as Peter Parker. I haven't loved him as Spider-Man, but that's obviously his biggest role. I haven't seen him in a ton of stuff, but I thought he was really good. This like innocence that he had to him, I thought maybe it's the face too that he's got, that just kind of like mouth agape, wide-eyed look that he has.
Yeah.
Approach to everything, especially in this movie, is just really fit. I thought he did a really good job. And then I also like Charlize Theron, I feel like is just good in everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you need a character to fall in love with, like she's the easiest person to cast, because she's got so much charisma and character on screen, and she's beautiful, and yeah.
Nice,
and I really
nice
like Delroy Lindo.
That one scene.
Yeah, that one scene. I really like Delroy Lindo until turns out that he's like this a child molester. But
yeah, I mean, they do everything in their power to make you really love that guy before they, the other shoe drops.
Pull the rug. Yeah, for sure. And even Paul Rudd. I know you're not the biggest Paul Rudd fan, but in what his role was in this movie, he's
goodness. I mean, I've always said that I like him better in supporting roles, and I mean, he's not in this movie much.
Yeah,
he just has to be like a nice guy who you feel some sympathy for when he crashes his plane and spends 20 days trudging through the swamp and then ends up with encephalitis or something from mosquito bites and becomes paralyzed from the waist down.
Was that a surprise to you? Because I was for sure, I was like, oh, he's definitely going to die in this. Like, there's no way he comes out alive. And then he comes out alive, and I was like, well, that's an interesting twist.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're playing it down the middle. He's half alive.
Hot take coming from Ryan Miller. I mean, only half alive. If you
it's yet another thing where it's like, I don't know if that's supposed to be read as like God's judgment on him for aborting a child, that he loses his like ability to walk, but it definitely feels like it's supposed to be some kind of fateful message to Charlize Theron, like, you, while he was away, you just like spent your days fucking this other guy, and like, you've had your fun, now guess what, you're stuck with half a person for the rest of your life.
Yeah it was interesting. I was like, oh, for sure it's gonna be he's gonna be dead, but then when he's not, it throws the whole wrinkle in the idea of Charlize and Toby staying together.
Yeah.
And she makes that decision pretty quickly, and it shows that she was basically just using him as a filler for using Spider-Man as a filler for Ant-Man, for sure.
Yeah. Everybody in it was good. Just take, like, if you forget for a moment some of the darker aspects of the movie, just like the look of it, the feel of it, the locations, like the time period, it does just have like a warm and fuzzy vibe. Like, it was easy to spend time in this world, and then, every now and then they surprise you with something fucked up to keep things
surprisingly
fresh.
Dark. Yeah, surprisingly darker than I was expecting.
I said, last thing I ever expected was incest, baby. Like, not what I was expecting. Especially, again, because you like Delroy Lindo so much.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. I'll say that I didn't love Michael Caine's performance. I just had a hard time getting past the accent. Like, I think his acting is always, I mean, he's Michael Caine. He's one of the best actors of all time. But it was just so off-putting to me that it was hard for me to like take him seriously in the movie. He's a good actor. There's no denying that. But I was surprised to learn that he won the Academy Award for this movie in particular.
Yeah.
Let's get to some of the reviews from the critics. Roger Ebert said, Why is there such a muddle about the movie subject? I left the theater wondering what the movie thought it was about and wasn't able to say. It's almost deliberately unfocused. It shows us many events without guiding them to add up to anything definite. 2 out of 4 stars.
I mean, that's kind of like what I was saying, where it's like it's tackling these big subjects, but it's playing it very close to the vest and staying very middle of the road. It's not being too judgmental so as not to scare any one type of viewer away.
I feel like if you're going to make a movie like this, say something, and it doesn't want to say anything.
I mean,
so
I will admit
that
that I was, you kind of see it coming and it's like cyclical and everything, but I was a little disappointed when he just goes back and accepts the job to be the new Dr. Larch.
Right.
I almost would have preferred if it was just like, he says his goodbyes, throws his jacket over his shoulder, and like walks down the dusty road away from the orchard, and you don't know where he's headed or something. Like it's a little bit sad. And I mean, those kids need someone to take care of them, and that he's a good person and all this, but it's like, I don't know. Homeboy got his dick wet a few times and saw a couple of other black and white movies, but there's so much more to life.
Yep. That's a great summary of the movie. What did you think about the switch about his heart? Did you even think that was going to be like, oh, he tricked him, or did you?
No, that never occurred to me.
Yeah, same.
But again, it's one of these things where it's like part of it feels like, oh, he was helping him stay away from the horrors of war. But then really it's, oh, he was just tricking the government into not taking away his protege. Who he was like going to force to take over the work from him.
Yeah. I gotta say, I agree with Raj's take of the movie. 2 and 4 stars is pretty accurate. David Rooney of Variety said, Hailstrom's film could have used more dramatic muscle, but is nonetheless a touching, old-fashioned charmer that ultimately satisfies. These are reviews from the time. These aren't like modern reviews that are looking back. So these came out when the movie came out.
I don't know David Rooney, but I have to also agree with what he says. It's like, there's some deficits in the story, but it's like, however many days past having watched it for the first time, it's like I see the forest for the trees almost. It's like those little things don't really taint my overall view. Like I just, gut reaction, like, oh, what did you think of the Cider House Rules? I liked it. Like that's, it's maybe not as deep as it maybe wants you to think that it is, but
that's the thing. It's not as deep as it thinks it should be. Like, cause it has this air about it, right? Even though the title just feels like super dramatic, and it does deal with dramatic stuff, but it's not quite there. Liz Schwarzbaum of Entertainment Weekly said the first screenplay Irving wrote from his own book, and the job suits him. B+. The most middle of the road, review. I couldn't find the whole review, but that was the only the quote from it that I could find.
I mean, speaking of him adapting his own story, it's crazy to me that you said that in the book, Toby and Charlize have a kid, right? That's what you said? Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Like the one little thing that I had read was that there's another character that was important in the book that he decided to cut, which was like a head nurse. But he apparently he felt that, it took away from Dr. Larch. So he kind of like combined Larch and this other female character for the movie. But that doesn't seem like as big of a change as no more baby yet again. I mean, there's a lot of instances of no baby in this movie, but
okay. So this is the plot from Wikipedia, partial from the plot. Wally goes off to serve in the Second World War and his plane shut down over Burma. He is declared missing by the military, but Homer and Candy both believe he is dead and move on with their lives, which includes beginning a romantic relationship. So it feels like even the context of a relationship is different in the book. When Candy becomes pregnant, they go back to the orphanage where their son is born and named Angel. And then it cuts to Wally coming back. Wally and Candy marry shortly after, and Candy and Homer maintain a secret affair that lasts some 15 years.
Holy shit!
Many years later, teenage Angel falls in love with Rose, the daughter of the head migrant worker at the apple orchard.
What?
Yes. So the book is vastly different.
It's incredibly different. I mean, that's hard to even call that an adaptation of that story. It's so different.
Yeah. So it's crazy that it's also the same writer that did it. So maybe he's just like, yeah, this is what I wanted.
Well,
to
I mean,
out.
I'm assuming the book was like a story that he was yearning to tell, and the script was, hey, let's make some money off of a movie that people will want to go see. I don't know. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it is wild. Empire Magazine, beautifully enacted literary cinema with a thoughtful, subtle Maguire, a perfectly Irvin-esque 20th century hero. 4 out of 5 stars. I feel like that's a little much, but Empire Magazine liked it quite a bit.
Have you ever seen any of the other movies based on Irving's books?
No, I haven't.
I've seen What's Eating Gilbert Grape. It's been a long time. Speaking of
I have seen
DiCaprio.
that, but that was in the mid 90s. I barely remember watching it, but yeah, I have seen that.
Yeah, I don't remember it super well, but yeah, the other ones I haven't seen.
As far as box office goes, this did pretty well. The budget reported of $24 million, which is about right for a movie like this. I mean, it's only 2 locations really in the entire movie, but
yeah.
The box office ended up with a domestic box office of $88.5 million. It had a pretty interesting run in the theaters because it only debuted in 8 theaters.
When exactly did this come out? This December?
Yeah, it came out.
Was it late December?
Yeah. It was late December.
So, I mean, was this a case of one of those we just want to get it in for awards season kind of things?
I don't know. It must have been because it debuted in 8 theaters. It grossed $158,000 its first weekend. It bumped up to 36 theaters the next week. And then third and fourth week, 324 theaters, which is still not a ton.
I mean, let's stop and think about it for a second, because it seems crazy to me. Like, you don't really hear about this much unless it's like some indie horror movie that then gets some buzz and it like spreads, like Paranormal Activity or something.
Right.
But like at the time, Tobey Maguire was basically a nobody. Charlize Theron had maybe been in like Reindeer Games and a couple of other things. Like, she wasn't a big name yet. Paul Rudd certainly wasn't a big name.
Yeah. Michael Caine's the biggest name in the movie.
But even at that time, like, he hadn't. I think Michael Caine is culturally relevant today because.
But in the 70s, he was bigger, right? Like
yeah,
70s,
exactly.
80s? Yeah.
And in like British cinema and stuff. But it's like through the 90s, I don't think anybody, for the most part, really knew him unless they were like, yeah, he's that guy from Jaws 4. But like, he is culturally relevant to anybody nowadays because of the Batman movies. And just working with Christopher Nolan in general.
Yeah.
So even Michael Caine, I don't feel like was that big of a deal at the time.
Right. Nobody in the 90s is going, let's go see the new Michael Caine movie, right? Like, that's not happening. So it goes slowly, from 8 theaters. 5th week, it's in 816 theaters, which again still isn't a large amount. Makes $4 million. That was number 14 overall in the box office. January through January 14th through February 21st, it's averaged 800 theaters. The Oscar announcements were February 15th. February 25th, it opens to 1,300 theaters. So this was that Oscars nominated. Yeah. Put it in the theaters. Now we'll make our big box office.
It feels like the thing that happens with like Poor Things or Parasite or Uncut Gems or something like that, where even if it has some buzz, it's not playing in a lot of places. And then all of a sudden it's like awards season. And then everybody's like, I want to see that now. And then they put it in theaters.
Yeah.
But for a movie that's like not a foreign film with just like a bunch of white people in it, it's surprising.
Sure. No internet. Internet's still relatively new. You're not watching movies on Netflix or anything like that. Oscars are different as well. Like, they only had 5 nominations, and getting a nomination was a little bit trickier. Whereas now they nominate 10, and it's like trying to find, how do we find 10 movies to nominate?
Yeah.
And gosh, okay, let's go to the awards. 7 Academy Award nominations: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, which it won, Best Adapted Screenplay, which it won, Film Editing, Original Score, and Production Design. So really big. And just looking at the awards from that year, the 5 Best Picture nominations were American Beauty, which won, The Cider House Rules, Green Mile, The Insider, and The Sixth Sense. I'm fine. Cider House Rules not winning. I haven't seen American Beauty. But to me, Sixth Sense would have been the one.
Based, like, in your opinion, like, based on what you've seen of the five?
Of the five, yeah. I haven't seen The Insider either. I need to see that one.
Never seen The Insider. Is that the one with Russell Crowe?
Yeah.
Okay. Never seen that. American Beauty, Cider House Rules.
The Green Mile.
Green Mile. Ooh.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, I do like American Beauty. I feel like that was kind of controversial. People were like, should that have really won? I mean, just based on like straight up filmmaking, and that's another movie that really fucking tugs at the heartstrings. I feel like I'd probably personally give it to Green Mile.
Yeah.
If it was like came down to me, like now. I mean, I only saw the Green Mile for the first time like within the last year.
Right. Reviewed on Triple Threat Theater.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at those nominations, I feel like there's a bunch of stuff missing, but we can talk about that later.
Well, I mean, director, again, that was before there were 10 nominations.
Yes,
otherwise, you'd probably have The Matrix in there. And
right. The Matrix definitely should have been at least nominated, but it feels like in 1999, there's no way they're nominating The Matrix, right? It feels like if you look at the movies nominated, they fit a very specific Oscar category, especially for the time.
Like Fight Club is another one where it feels like nowadays that would have been nominated now that there's 10 nominations.
For sure. Sam Mendes won Best Director, so that's how the Cider House Rules lost there. And then, of course, Best Supporting Actor, Michael Caine won. I don't see it, but the other nominees were Tom Cruise in Magnolia, Michael Clark Duncan in The Green Mile.
Oh, come on. Michael Clark Duncan. That guy's incredible in that movie.
Jude Law in The Talented Mr. Ripley, and Haley Joel Osment in Sixth Sense. So,
I mean, Haley Joel Osment's good in that movie. I am never on page, like, if you're under 12 years old, you should be winning an Oscar. Like, I'm not in that camp.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, how do you not give it to Michael Clark Duncan?
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen Magnolia. I think it might be one of the movies we're going to be covering, but Tom Cruise in a performance that he doesn't do anymore. Like he's not in movies like Magnolia anymore.
I don't know. Have you seen what's his fucking character's name in Tropic Thunder?
I mean, Tropic Thunder is how old is that now?
It's like 2008 or something.
Yeah, that's freaking old, man. We're in 2024. Is that how unbelievable is that?
He's in the twilight of his career. He's got to be careful with the choices he makes now and play it very safe.
Yeah, I get it. I love the stuff that he's in now. It's just he's not making, he's not working with those directors anymore. He's making his big action movies. So screenplay, this one for best screenplay based on the novel. Election was also up for nomination. The Green Mile as well. The Insider and The Talented Mr. Ripley. So
those were all adapted? I didn't know Election was a book.
Yeah, it's a novel. Yep.
Okay.
So
I wonder if it has the same opening line.
I don't know. I just watched Election. That was so good.
Yeah. Great movie.
Yeah. So yeah, quite a run. It does feel like in 1999 things were a little bit different in the Oscars. Maybe they weren't. I keep saying they're different, but it feels like there was like 6 or 7 movies that they nominated and that was it. And so it's not surprising that this got as many nominations and wins as it did.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't think it's egregious that Michael Caine won for supporting actor. I would not have chosen him though. When you look at just the nominations that were there, I wouldn't have given it to him, not including the people that weren't actually nominated.
Yeah.
So as far as any cultural impact, the abortion debate, if you look at stuff going back when the movie came out, I think the big controversy for the movie was, is it pro-choice or pro-life, or what is it trying to say? I think that's kind of the question that we've even asked here today. Is like, I don't know what the movie's stance is on abortion. I mean, it feels like it's literally
two, like the two of the main characters are pro-choice and pro-life. That's the whole point of the movie.
But you have the pro-choice or the pro-life are like doing an abortion, but of course it's the situation that is in. I don't know. Like, I'm just saying, as far as like cultural impact, there was definitely a debate that was started from this movie.
And then when people still debated things instead of just like
right, it was actually
screaming
like,
at one another and posting flame wars on social media.
And when we say debates, we mean actual debates, not just like Brandon from Pennsylvania on Twitter said, "Fuck this movie." You know what I mean? Like there's actually people talking.
Brandon, such a Brandon thing to post.
Totally. Second Oscar win and 5th nomination for Michael Caine. This was Toby's second leading role after Pleasantville. And then from Us Magazine in 2016, Charlize was quoted as saying, Toby and I had a bit of a rough time. Actually, she told V Magazine, I mean, we're good now. It was a difficult movie. Every day is completely different for a completely different reason. Whether it's the weather or the writing isn't there, or you don't get along with your castmate, you have to be able to go to something that's just as powerful. Does it make it as enjoyable? Probably not. I mean, there were a couple of days that Toby and I had a rough time. So that's a little interesting. I know she also had a rough time with Tom Hardy.
Well, is she trying to say that her and Toby like butting heads, or the two of them because of like the subject matter had a rough time like together?
It sounds like the two of them maybe didn't get as well as their characters did.
No, the fact that she says we're good now, I don't know. Yeah. It's just been in the news recently-ish because of Furiosa and all the talk of Mad Max. That her. But I mean, that sounds like it was all Tom Hardy being like a fucking prima donna weirdo,
right?
Like needing to sit in his costume in his trailer for 3 hours and show up late to set so that he could get in the right mood to just grunt. I mean, I fucking love that movie. But
yeah, it was great.
You read shit like that, you're just like, come on, man. Like the shit with Jim Carrey and Man on the Moon.
Oh, yeah,
like, fuck you. If that's what you need to be good in a movie, then maybe you shouldn't be in that movie.
It's funny because Mad Max is Fury Road is one of the best movies of the last.
Yeah, I fucking love that movie.
years.
That's the movie that basically made me finally turn my back on the Oscars. Like,
yeah,
but and yeah, I love his performance and everything. And I only just read this stuff. I don't really know all the details. I'm taking Shirley's Theron at her word, but like,
sure.
You know, regardless of how good the movie is or how good he is, like that's a shitty way to act.
Yeah,
like you just
he actually at the premiere in Cannes on stage apologized to George Miller because he said that he didn't understand what they were trying to do, and it wasn't until he saw the movie that he got it, and so he was like, he publicly apologized to George Miller.
Maybe if that's the case, then don't do the fucking movie. Jesus Christ.
I do think making this is a show about Cider House Rules, but I do think making those Mad Max movies is difficult. Like even Anya Taylor-Joy talked about how tough it was making Furiosa, but
sure, like physically demanding and all that. But if he's like, I'm going to apologize now to George Miller for being a fucking prima donna and showing up to set 2 hours late while everyone was waiting for me because I didn't understand what we were doing. Fuck off.
Yeah. So lots of takes from
come at me, Tom Hardy.
Do we have any other thoughts before we end the show? Any other thoughts about the Cider House Rules you want to get off?
Gosh, I insulted paraplegics. I started a flame war with Tom Hardy. What else could I possibly say? Yeah.
All right. The question is, did we miss it? Did you miss the Cider House Rules?
In other words, should I have seen it before now? Is this a movie that I...
Yes.
Yeah, I would say I missed it. I enjoyed the movie quite a bit. I mean, it's definitely not perfect, but that's just the level of enjoyment I got out of it while watching it, and I think it's got a really nice polish to it. Like, again, it's not a movie that I was actively like, oh, I need to see that for like all these years, but I always kind of wanted to see it, and yeah, I missed it. I missed this movie.
This is a tough one because I agree. This wasn't... With the subject matter as difficult as it was in some of the parts of the movie, it's actually a really easy movie to watch. Like, you're just kind of with Tobey Maguire throughout this movie. And it's just like, oh, by the way, Delroy Lindo raped his daughter. You know what I mean? Like, as it's kind of, he's just so plucky and into it. So there's like an easiness to watching it. I don't love the movie, so I'm going to say I didn't miss it.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's what it's going to take for you to say you missed a movie? You have to love it? Is that what we're establishing now on the first episode of Movies I Missed?
I would have to say it would have to be like a 4 stars for me to at least say I missed it. And I feel like this is the 3-est 3 that has ever 3'd. You know what I mean? Like it's fine. I am glad I finally saw it, but I didn't really like it. I feel like it's just kind of middling. And so I'm going to say no. I'm going to say I didn't miss it.
I'm leaving the star ratings back in 2022 on Sidetracked.
Well, I'm not saying, that's not I'm not saying like give it a 3 stars or whatever. And this is not even a letterbox review. But if you're asking me, like, does it has to hit at least the threshold for me. And this would be like the 3th of 3s if I was to give it a star rating.
We're basically working on a coin flip here. Heads or tails, up or down, yay or nay, thumbs up, thumbs down. It's a thumbs up for me. I missed it.
Okay. I did not. So that's how we're going to start movies I missed with the year 1999. Next episode is going to be an interesting one. We're back with Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. This is my choice. So come back for that. Excited to be doing this podcast, Ryan. It's been a pleasure.
Back at it.
All right. Movies I missed, 1999, Jesse Munoz.
And I'm Ryan Miller.
Come back next time for Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.